There's a major legal fight happening right now, and it could become a much bigger problem for Prince Harry than people realize. Compared to his other court battles, this one hasn't been getting nearly as much attention. And there's one huge difference this time. Harry isn't the one starting the fight. He's reportedly facing legal action connected to Sentebale, the charity he helped create with Prince Sieso of Lesotho.
Fortunate position that he's not the claimant, he's the defendant. The judgment always public. Would he be humiliated? Enormously. The embarrassment of the discovery process is nuclear, it really is.
The charity was set up to help children and young people affected by HIV in Lesotho and Botswana. At first, this might sound like another messy disagreement inside a charity, but once you look deeper, things get much more serious. It started in March 2025, when Harry and Prince Sieso stepped down from Sentebale after their relationship with the board chair, Dr. Sophie Chandauka, completely broke down. That was the official story. But then reports and anonymous claims about Chandauka started appearing in American media. Suddenly, what had been an internal disagreement was becoming a very public battle. According to reports about legal filings in the dispute, there are claims that Harry and his associate Mark Dyer helped coordinate negative media coverage about Chandauka. But that is only an allegation. It has not been proven in court, and Harry and Dyer have strongly denied it. So we cannot say that any campaign actually happened the way it has been alleged.
He quit his role as patron of Sentebale. He and the co-founder, Prince Sieso, stated that they resigned with heavy hearts, were in shock, and felt the relationship with board chair Dr. Sophie Chandauka had broken down beyond repair.
Before the dispute went further, Chandauka had already raised concerns with the Charity Commission. The regulator looked into the situation and found no evidence of widespread bullying inside Sentebale. It also found no specific overreach by either the chair or the patron. That was important for Harry's side. However, the regulator also said the public fight had damaged the charity's reputation. And this is where things could get much more complicated, because a Charity Commission report and a court case are two very different things. A court case can open the door to something called disclosure, and that could become a major part of this whole situation. Disclosure sounds like complicated legal language, but the basic idea is simple. During a civil court case, both sides may have to hand over documents and messages that are relevant to what they're fighting about. That could include emails, text messages, records, or conversations with other people. Depending on what the court decides is relevant, private communications could potentially become part of the legal process.
Then little leaks to American news outlets started to pop up that were even more scathing towards Chandauka, shielded by the veil of anonymous sources.
That's where this situation could get uncomfortable for Harry, because suddenly the story isn't only about what happened inside Sentebale, it could also become about what was being said privately while everything was going down. English defamation law also works differently from American law. In America, strong free speech protections can make certain defamation cases difficult to win. England has a different legal system, with rules covering things like serious harm, truth, honest opinion, and whether publishing something was in the public interest. The exact details matter. What was allegedly said, who allegedly said it, and what evidence exists to support it? Those questions could become extremely important if the case keeps moving forward. Harry is also in a very different position.
And we don't actually know what the charity claims they've done. We simply know Sophie Chandauka claims that they've organized a tremendous media campaign against her and against the charity.
Compared with many of his previous court battles. Think about some of his biggest legal fights. Harry has taken newspapers and other organizations to court himself. In those situations, he was the person choosing to bring the legal challenge. This time, he could be the one having to defend himself. When somebody else brings a case against you, the whole setup changes. You can defend yourself, challenge the claims, and negotiate, but you don't control everything. The court has its own schedule, and the other side has its own strategy. That could put Harry under a very different kind of pressure. There may be several legal defenses available, depending on exactly what was said and what evidence exists. But evidence is the key word here, because that brings us straight back to disclosure. If certain private messages are considered important to the case, lawyers may seek access to them through the proper court process.
Blown the whistle once before on Harry. She took the, how shall I put it, unorthodox but very clever step of reporting the charity to the Charity Commission, which is the British regulator of charities, is actually fairly toothless, but that's another discussion.
One barrister discussing the situation reportedly compared disclosure to something close to a legal nuclear weapon. That sounds extreme, but the point is pretty clear. Disclosure can sometimes bring private material into a legal fight that people never expected outsiders to see. And there's an obvious twist when it comes to Harry. For years, he has publicly fought against media intrusion into his private life. Privacy has been at the center of many of his battles with the British press. But this situation is different. If private messages become relevant evidence in a legal case, they could potentially have to be disclosed through a lawful court process. That is completely different from journalists illegally obtaining private information. But from a public image point of view, it could still create a very awkward situation for Harry. Reports about the dispute have suggested that relevant communications could potentially include private messages discussing Chandauka, possibly involving Harry and Meghan.
Did a sort of mealy-mouthed report in 2025, and it sort of said everything is for the best in the best of all possible worlds, and it wasn't finding her a liar, and it wasn't finding Harry a liar, and the sun was shining, and all they basically said was that it's unfortunate that they both brought in publicity that was no good for the charity.
But this needs to be crystal clear. We do not know what those messages contain. We also don't know which messages, if any, would actually have to be handed over or become public. That would depend on what the court decides is relevant. The messages could be completely normal, they could help Harry's side, help the other side, or mean absolutely nothing. Nobody should pretend they already know what's sitting inside those conversations. One barrister discussing the case reportedly noted, when the question of deleting communications came up, that doing so would be illegal. Again, context is extremely important here. That does not mean Harry, Meghan, or anyone else deleted messages, and there is no basis here to claim that happened. The comment was reportedly about the general legal responsibility to preserve evidence during litigation. So this isn't an accusation. It simply shows how seriously relevant messages and documents can be treated once a legal battle gets underway.
Claims that the Duke's team asked her to defend his wife Meghan from negative publicity. And she says that she said, no, we're not setting a precedent by which we become an extension of the Sussex PR machine. So that's pretty hot, isn't it?
And then we have the timing, which could create another major headache. When Harry started previous court cases himself, he had some control over when those fights began. This situation is different. The other side has its own strategy. Harry has his defense strategy, and ultimately, the court controls important deadlines and when a trial might happen. That means this situation could hang around for a long time. Reports have suggested that a possible trial may not happen until 2027, creating the possibility that this legal fight stays in the headlines for months or even years. That timing could be especially awkward because the Birmingham Invictus Games are also expected in 2027. Invictus is one of Harry's biggest projects. He has spent years building it and has connected a huge part of his public image to the event. So having one of his biggest public events happening while a major legal battle is still sitting in the background could create plenty of unwanted attention. Even if Harry eventually gets a favorable outcome, the headlines and questions surrounding the case could still become a serious distraction. But we also have to be fair here. Being sued does not mean Harry is guilty of anything.
Says that the number one risk for this organization, meaning Centaurus, was the toxicity of its lead patron's brand. So obviously all that's going to come out at trial. This is going to be gripping stuff.
Claims made in legal papers are still claims until they are proven or accepted by a court. Harry's lawyers can challenge the allegations, question the evidence, argue about what information should be disclosed, and use whatever legal defenses are available. The case could also change, narrow, settle, or end without a full trial. Nobody knows the final outcome yet, and treating allegations as proven facts would be jumping way ahead of the evidence. What makes this story important is the position Harry could find himself in. In many of his famous legal battles, Harry was the one bringing the fight. Now he could be defending himself, and that means dealing with allegations he didn't choose to bring, possible requests for private communications, legal deadlines, and potentially years of uncertainty. It's a completely different position, and that alone makes this case worth watching closely as it develops. And then there's another problem: money. Big defamation cases in England can become extremely expensive. You're talking about lawyers, court hearings, reviewing large amounts of evidence, arguments over documents, and potentially preparing for a full trial. If a case lasts for years, those bills can keep growing. So when you put everything together, the legal costs, possible disclosure of private messages, the long timeline, the public attention, and a possible trial around the same period as the Invictus Games, you can see why this story could become a much bigger headache for Harry than it first appears. And then we get to the money, because this is where things could get seriously expensive. One example mentioned in legal commentary involved a claimant reportedly winning around £140,000 in damages, while facing roughly £10 million in related costs.
Bauer's betrayal, he does have a source close to Senebale that says that Harry's brand and that Harry's just toxic activity over the last 6 years negatively affected their ability to fundraise in general.
That doesn't mean the same thing will happen here, but it shows just how quickly major defamation cases can become financial monsters. And that raises an obvious question. How does a relatively small charity focused on helping children and young people in Lesotho and Botswana pay for a high court legal battle that could potentially run for years? Senebale has publicly said that its legal costs are being covered through external funding rather than charitable donations, which is an important distinction. But the identity of that outside funding has not been publicly confirmed. There has been speculation about whether a media organization with a history of legal battles against Harry could somehow be involved. But let's be crystal clear, that is speculation, not established fact. There is no solid public evidence proving who is behind the funding, and it would be wrong to present any theory as confirmed. Still, the question itself is interesting, because if outside funding is supporting a long and expensive legal battle, people are naturally going to want to know where that money is coming from. There's also a bigger issue running through this whole dispute, and it comes down to where the charity ends and the personal brand begins. According to reporting, Chandauka has described part of the disagreement as involving pressure connected to managing media coverage around Meghan. Harry's side has reportedly rejected that version of events. So again, we're dealing with competing accounts, not proven facts. But the basic question is important. Should the leadership of a charity ever feel responsible for protecting or managing the public image of its famous patrons? Or should every decision stay focused on the charity's mission? That tension has appeared in stories surrounding royal charity work before. One older account involving Meghan and royal staff reportedly included the line, "The focus is the charity, it's never about you." Whether every detail of that older story is accurate is another question, but the idea behind it is pretty simple. When a famous person becomes connected to a charity, their celebrity can bring huge attention and money to the cause. But that same fame can also become a distraction if stories about the individual start becoming bigger than the charity itself. And that appears to be one of the wider tensions sitting underneath the Senebale dispute. There's also an interesting comparison with Prince William. Based on the public record, William hasn't faced a charity dispute of this particular scale involving this kind of court battle. That doesn't automatically tell us anything about either brother's character. Different charities have different boards, different structures, different personalities, and completely different problems. Sometimes it simply comes down to circumstances and choices. But as a public comparison, it's still notable that Harry now finds himself dealing with a very public dispute connected to an organization that was once one of the strongest parts of his charitable identity. There have also reportedly been claims connected to the wider dispute involving concerns about online harassment aimed at William and Catherine following public statements. This part needs to be handled very carefully. The reported argument is not that Harry directly ordered or encouraged harassment. Instead, commentary has discussed a much more complicated theory about whether certain public statements can create an environment where other people act on their own. Legal commentators have also reportedly pointed out that proving such a theory could be extremely difficult. So this shouldn't be turned into some dramatic claim that Harry directly caused harassment, because that is not what has been established. And the same caution applies to the mystery surrounding the legal funding. It might be tempting to connect dots and assume some powerful media company is secretly paying the bills because of Harry's long history of fighting the British press. That might make for a wild headline, but without evidence, it remains a theory. The fair question is simply this: who is providing the external funding? Until reliable evidence answers that question, anything beyond that is speculation. Now look at the bigger picture, because this legal battle isn't happening in a vacuum. Harry and Meghan's post-royal business world has changed considerably over the years, with various media and commercial deals evolving, ending, or being reworked. Those developments aren't caused by this Sentebale dispute, and they shouldn't be mixed together as though they are. But an expensive legal battle lasting potentially years can create pressure for almost anyone, especially when it arrives alongside other changes in business and public life. So where does that leave Harry right now? The most important thing to remember is that the major claims being discussed here have not been proven in court. Harry and Mark Dyer have rejected allegations made against them, and they are entitled to defend themselves through the legal process. The Charity Commission also found no evidence of widespread or systemic bullying at Sentebale and no specific overreach by either the chair or patron. Those findings matter, and they should not be brushed aside just because the court dispute sounds more dramatic. At the same time, a favorable regulatory finding doesn't automatically make every separate legal question disappear. Some details surrounding the legal dispute remain unclear from publicly available reporting, and the court process could take time to establish exactly what happened. Legal commentators have also reportedly acknowledged that proving claims of a coordinated campaign could be difficult. So anyone acting like the result is already guaranteed, for either side is getting way ahead of the story. And that might be Harry's biggest problem here. Even if he eventually gets a favorable result, getting there could still mean legal bills, months or years of headlines, arguments over evidence, and potentially uncomfortable questions about private communications. Winning a case and escaping without any financial or reputational damage are two completely different things. Sometimes the process itself becomes part of the punishment, even when somebody ultimately succeeds in defending their position. That's why this case could become one of the more important legal stories surrounding Harry over the next couple of years. It isn't simply about who wins or loses, it's about what evidence comes forward, what the court allows into the case, how much the fight costs, who is funding Sentebale's legal side, and what impact the entire battle has on both Harry and a charity that was supposed to be focused on helping vulnerable young people. So what do you think? Does Harry ultimately come out of this with his reputation intact, or could the legal process itself cause damage even if the biggest allegations against him are never proven? And what about the funding question? Do you think people deserve to know exactly who is paying for Sentebale's legal fight? Or should everyone wait until there's real evidence before reading anything into it? Drop your comments down below because I want to hear what you think. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you like, subscribe, and share the video with someone who's been following this story. Your support helps the channel keep digging into these stories as new details come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.